getting to know the candidates that are looking to, well, these guys here, they're looking to lead Oskaloosa. So we have a mayor candidate and 4 city council candidates. None are opposed right now. But we're going to start the evening off with a special guest. We have Matt Thompson from Indian Hills Community College. He's the president there, and they have a special program that's going on this year. Would you like to tell us a little more?
Ken, thanks for having me, and for everybody that's watching on Facebook. Good evening. I'm Matt Thompson, president of Indian Hills Community College. Have been in Indian Hills since 2013. Absolutely love our region that composes of 10 counties, Mahaska County being one of our really vital counties that we serve. And certainly also enjoy our partnership that we have with William Penn University. I know University of Penn president's here with us tonight, and just wanted to talk a little bit about a project that we have going on right now. We are going for a bond referendum, $28 million that'll be on the ballot on November 2nd. And you have to go back to 1983 since Indian Hills Community College passed a bond referendum. Something that when we have a need that we've identified, we'll go for it, but it hasn't happened since 1983. So we are trying to put together resources to be able to improve campus facilities in Centerville, Iowa, at our Centerville campus, an academic building that would bring welding technology, a CDL program, improvements to our agriculture program, and also new classrooms for general education students that are attending that campus. We've maxed out the space that we have on that campus with recent enrollment growth that we've had, and we're looking forward to making improvements to facilities that were built back in 1971. And what's been shared with me is that those buildings were supposed to be there for 10 years. They're temporary modular-based buildings in need of significant improvement. We've made nice changes to them and updated paint and carpet, but their livelihood is really way past their anticipated time period of 10 years. So we are looking at a new academic building there. We have a couple projects on the Ottumwa main campus and the Ottumwa North campus near the airport. Those projects consist of, at the North Campus, a criminal justice training center. We've talked with law enforcement across our 10-county region, and one thing that we know is that there's a time right now to support law enforcement. There's a lot of challenges that we see in the media, and at the college we've chosen to do more work with law enforcement. We've had a really strong criminal justice program for quite some time, and in this past year we've looked at how can we continue to serve existing law enforcement that are facing the challenges of negative press and so forth. We have started to do continuing education, and this past year served 400 existing law enforcement with training. We believe that we can do even more. The Criminal Justice Training Center would be a renovation project of an existing facility that would allow us to house not only our criminal justice students, but also serve existing law enforcement. And our plan is, once we pass the bond, to go out and become a regional law enforcement academy, to become accredited, to become a regional law enforcement academy. That allows people to stay local. Being here and making sure that we have a law enforcement workforce of the future. Right now, when people go up to Des Moines for the Law Enforcement Academy, sometimes they don't come back. They get jobs in the Des Moines metro area, and we want to make sure that we retain talent here for great public safety. On the Ottumwa main campus, we're looking at some modifications to our fine arts facility, an addition of 4,200 square feet. Those buildings were built in 1961. We were able to renovate the St. John's Auditorium back in 2004, 2005, but all of the spaces around that auditorium have not been touched since 1961. So we would be making improvements to the classrooms, adding space for our fine arts. About 3,500 people a year come to Indian Hills for the fine arts, and as we look at the facilities there, we do not have a handicap accessible restroom in that area around the auditorium. We would be making improvements to make sure that we have accessible restrooms for our guests that come to Indian Hills each year. We have an additional project that is an addition to a student wellness facility on campus. We've recently added a sports medicine program that has a transfer opportunity to go into athletic training. It has a transfer opportunity to go into physical therapy, and also allows us to leverage students that are in that program to go into our physical therapist assistant program. That facility would have lab space and classroom space for that new program. It would also add intramural activity space for our students. Students come to Indian Hills and they look for where am I going to live and what am I going to do and where am I going to eat as well. And we're trying to make sure that we have the facilities that attract students, because at Indian Hills, one thing we know is that 86% of our graduates stay here and they live here and they pay taxes here. They are CDL drivers, they're welders, they're nurses, they're future educators. We now have 119 students that are in our transfer education major track. So we know a lot of superintendents in the area are looking for great educators of the future. We've added that program and now have 119 students that we hope we also keep here in our area teaching future generations. It takes some investment by the community to make those things happen. We've been out since April 26th talking about the projects, the costs, and what that means to our community. Right here in Mahaska County, we're really proud to partner with not only William Penn, but also many of the area businesses. There's a job training program called 260E and 260F that we've utilized here with businesses in the area. Oskaloosa Engineering, Oskaloosa Foods, Clow, Mahaska Health, and Musco have all worked with Indian Hills Community College to upskill their existing workforce. And that's something we're really proud of. Talking to the mayor here earlier, Indian Hills does provide family-sustaining jobs that are in demand across the region. And we've raised and saved $8 million towards these projects that we're talking about tonight. We've really worked hard to try to put together resources that help decrease any type of tax burden on our 10-county region. We are looking at a $28 million bond referendum on the ballot November 2nd. We are spread across 10 counties, and so when you have that many counties, if you just do the simple math, it's about $2.8 million per county. And if you're looking at what the costs are for this, on a $35,000 home, you're looking at a $4.03 increase per year. On a $50,000 home, a $5.76 estimated cost per year of increase. $75,000 assessed home, $8.64. On a $100,000 home, it's $11.52 or less than $1 a month that you'd be looking at for an increase. The investment in a community college pays back. $235 million are brought back into our region every single year because of the work Indian Hills Community College does with business and industry training, with our enrollment that we have. Each year we enroll about 10,405 students, and I want to be really clear about what that breakdown is. About 5,000 students per year take credit courses with Indian Hills. Those are the transfer education majors. They're the physical therapists, they're the welders, they're industrial maintenance technicians. The other 5,000 individuals are people who may be out in the workforce that are coming back and taking a continuing education class. They would be the law enforcement that we train each year. They would be the nurses that are getting CEUs and making sure that they can maintain their licensure. They're individuals that may be taking interest class. Maybe they want to learn how to bake a cake, or they want to do some woodworking, some fun classes that we offer as well. But in total, 10,405 students a year receive an education from Indian Hills Community College. With that, I want to thank you very much for taking the time. And if you're watching live tonight, feel free to go to our Indian Hills website, www.indianhills.edu. And on the front page, there's information about the bond projects, what we're trying to do to continue to provide a great education within our 10-county region. With that, I would take any questions from the crowd. Do it later. All right, Here you go.
Well, we'll get it. I know we'll get in the meat and taters of this. So hopefully, if you have questions, I'd be happy to help take some as we go through the evening, or even online. If you have any questions, we'll try and help make that possible. So first of all, we're going to start off with the most basic deal. We're going to introduce each other tonight a little bit, and we'll start right here with Dave Creutzfeldt, Mayor.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching. My name is Dave Creutzfeldt. I'm running for mayor, running for re-election as it is. I'm hitting the end of my 12th year, and I'm looking to do another term. My wife Jane is here. We have 4 children between us. They are all grown and have moved away from the Oskaloosa area, and so we're proud of the way that they've been able to take the education they got in Oskaloosa and been able to roll that up and move into successful lives. With them, we also have grandchildren. We've got 4 of those, and then I guess I'm just enjoying being the mayor of Oskaloosa and look forward to doing it again.
I'm Lisa Ocean. I'm running for the at-large city council position. It's not a glamorous title. I wish it was something else, but there it is. My husband and I moved to Oskaloosa 4 years ago. I had taught community college for 30 years, and I can honestly say it is the best investment of taxpayer dollars. The return on investment, not only for trained workers, but also keeping people out of jail and off of food stamps and other costs, to society. So thank you for the community college pitch. Because of that experience, I've been very interested in the community. And when I decided to take an early retirement, and we were looking for a new community, and we looked at a number of them, but Oskaloosa just seemed to have so much to offer. And I'm a believer too. Sometimes you have to embrace change and make the best of it, or otherwise it's going to find you. So anyway,
Lisa, I'm Rhonda Allman. I work for Mid-American Energy. I moved here in 1999 from Illinois. My husband works for the school system. He's the director of operations and the director of transportation for the Oskaloosa schools. We have 2 children. Our daughter is in college, and our son is in high school. He's 17, and he takes classes at DMAC, so I'm a very strong community college person too. They're great programs. I moved out to Keoma when I first moved here, and then I moved into town a couple years later. And obviously, I'm around the community. I work out with Lisa at the Y. I'm a very big member in the community. I teach at my job. I teach in the apprenticeship. I teach gas servicemen for the apprenticeship up in Adel. We're currently rewriting books for the apprenticeship and teaching guides and programs, and it's a lot. But we've gotten some kids, and we've gotten some high schools actually in Des Moines that are coming and joining, and they're going to work together with us up at Mid-American Energy. We have a hard time getting people to come here. It's a beautiful community. I think it does have a lot to offer, but I say in the last 20 years, you go to someone's house and, hey, good to see you. I'm there to turn your gas and electric on. Welcome to the community. And 2 years later, you're there to turn them back off. They love the people. We had great friends, but just there was nothing here. And I hear it all the time. And so my husband and I were talking, and like I said, he worked for the city for 27 years. He was in the wastewater department, and now he's been at the school almost 6. He's a lifelong resident, 51 years, and we just got done talking, and someone asked me to run. They said, would you run for council? And I thought, what am I getting myself into? I'm on steering committees. I'm writing books right now for schools. I work a lot. I'm on call a lot. But I felt a need to do it because I see it. I talk to these people. So since I decided to run a couple weeks ago, I have talked to the fire department and business owners and builders and residents, and it's been amazing. The people in my class, in my workout class, and it's a general census with everybody. People want to complain about everything here, but they don't want to do anything about it. And so it's kind of frustrating. I'll say to people, I said to a guy today, he's in my church, 70 plus years old, and he said, God bless you, I can't believe you're running. And he's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, somebody we really need to worry about our 20, 30, 40-year-olds, because people, my kids, they're going to college. I hope they go out. I hope they venture out. I hope they go somewhere. But if they choose to come back to Oskaloosa, what do they have? I mean, you drive up A Avenue, you drive up Market. You hear it all the time. I mean, I hear it daily. There's just nothing here. Some of that we can't control. Obviously, the council's not going to fix everything, but I think there's some things we need to do to promote. Let's promote the new Y. Let's promote the good things that we have in the community. Let's try to bring people here that want to stay here and not be here for 2 or 3 years and be like, we had some great friends, but we're leaving. And so I guess for me, it was just a need. Like I said, my husband's a lifelong member here. He'll die here. But you see the decline, and you see it, and you hear it, and you witness it, and people are complaining about everything. I don't want to be a complainer anymore. Let's do something about it. Let's try to fix some of this.
Good evening, everybody. I am Janet Kuski-Hermson, and I'm running for First Ward. I came to school at William Penn back in 2012, and I got heavily involved in student government and met a lot of community leaders through that. Since I graduated from William Penn, I have been involved with Mahaska Young Professionals, Oskaloosa Main Street. I serve as the board chair, and I'm currently the treasurer on the chamber board. This is kind of a progression that just was meant to happen when it happened. I had many community leaders ask me if I would step up and take this position, and I'm excited to bring a young female voice to City Council and for the future leaders of our community. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Charlie Comfort. I'm running for one of the 2 open at-large City Council seats. I've lived in Oskaloosa my whole life, currently serve on the Oskaloosa School Board. Married to Soraya, actually celebrating my 3-year wedding anniversary today. Love you, dear. Thank you for staying home with the baby tonight. I'm running for City Council because there was a number of open seats coming up this year, retirements on the City Council from individuals who I felt had been pretty important in building Oskaloosa back from where we had been. I think there's been a lot of good that's happened in the past decade or so, and so I'm interested in being involved with the council going forward and making Oskaloosa a place where young people can raise a family. Like Janet, I want to bring that youthful perspective to the council, maybe look at things a little bit differently than we have in the past, and really just help that momentum continue and help the growth continue.
Alrighty, thank you, folks. So do we have any questions from the audience here? Don't be shy. No questions? All right. I'll just have you stand over here.
Hello, Kurt Keogh, Oskaloosa resident. I guess 2 of you have spoken about what we can do to attract and retain young people to town. I guess I'm just curious as to what do you think is missing, and what ideas do you have on how to promote and sustain the town to retain and bring in that young people?
I'll go. I'm a member of the Y. We have a new Y coming in. My boys swam for the Y. It was a great program, great coaches, great atmosphere. My husband has the early childhood center out there. I just currently went down to visit my sister down in Mississippi. One of the first things we did was went to her new gym. I mean, it's an important fixture in this community to have a place for people to go. It's a beautiful building. We have beautiful facilities. I agree. I think I'm a current member, and I worry. I'll be honest with you. I worry about it because I know the building's old, but we still have great instructors there. We still have great things, but it's declining. So I'm hoping that we will really embrace that and promote that. Have people from New Sharon, have people from Eddyville come work out with your family, come to Body Pump, come to Spin with Lisa and I. And I do think that's great. I also think the bike trail. I ride the bike trail. You probably see me. I walk and bike trail all the time. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. My dog, my friend Candy, we were out there all the time. But for a 20, 30, 40-year-olds, I'm 50 now, so I don't fall in that category, but I feel like, I'm not using like a bar, but we could have, if we had some places where we had, the pub and grub with that had the bags tournament in the back and some dart leagues. I played darts on a dart league. I was terrible, but my 20s, we went out, we played softball in the summer, and we did dart league in the fall. There's not a lot to draw. My kids, mom, they're in Des Moines tonight. They're at Wells Fargo. Nowadays, kids that are 20s, 30s, and 40s, they'll move. They'll pay higher taxes. They'll spend more money for their houses because they want to live where there's something to do, right? You know, they'll pay that extra money to have all those amenities up there. Do I think we're going to have everything? Am I realistic? No, we're not going to have everything. I get that, but I think there's some things that, you know, let's bring in some things to this community. I mean, you know, we've got a Scooter's Coffee, and I joked about it. We meet on the square at 5 o'clock in the morning to walk our group from the Y, and that place is hopping from 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the morning. So I think if people build it, I think they'll come. I think people will use it. I think they'll come to those places, and they want to have a place to go. They don't want to go to Des Moines. They don't want to drive to Pella to have a place to do that. So I think it's important that we try to pull a few things. Maybe we can't pull a ton, maybe, you know, one or two things, but if you can, you know, you'll have growth if you can build it. If you can build it, they'll come. That's what, you know, we say.
I'd also like to touch on that subject. You know, we do have some projects in the work. The old post office building is currently being developed, and that's a huge, you know, asset for our community when it gets done. You know, that took city partnership with private developers. It's not just going to be the city who's going to get things done. We have to be able to go out and market and get those developers, bring them into the community. And with being on Main Street, you know, we have grants and stuff like that. We try to bring different businesses to town. We have the market analysis. We've surveyed what this community needs for, you know, different parts of the population. And I think that our current council has done a good job to, you know, go and get those, but we need developers willing to come in. We need to know how to market ourselves and bring it in. But we are trying. And since I came to school, you know, we've really turned a corner, and I think that it's positive. And I think we need to focus on the positive and not say we don't have anything, but focus on we can get things here.
I'd like to take a stab at that one as well. I think there's three things that we've got to take a look at as a council. Number one, quality of life improvements. We've made several. The council's been very proactive about this within the past 10 years. We've seen more work done on the rec trail. We've seen a major undertaking done with the Edmondson Park Playground. We've seen, most importantly, the Early Childhood and Recreation Center. I think that's a huge project that is important to attracting young families. In fact, it's so like I like to joke with people, it's such a big deal that one of our neighboring communities is taking up a similar project. Number two, as we attract young families, they need to have a place to live. One thing the council needs to continue to be proactive about is housing. Some years back, there was a study done by the city council, and there were several things that were pointed out as priorities. One of them was the need for more single-family lots. There was a need for more, quite honestly, just a general more inventory of homes on the market, quite obviously, and more lots for builders to build single-family, multifamily homes, and just a general recommendation for public-private partnerships to increase our housing abilities in town. We heard at the school board forum last night, people are willing to come to Oskaloosa to work, but when they get here, they're having problems finding a place to live. So that's one of the things that we can look at. And lastly, community pride. We have to look at the image that we're projecting out. We have a lot of good things going on, but quite honestly, when we market ourselves, we've got to be very cognizant of the image we're sending. I've seen a number of very positive improvements announced by the city, and unfortunately the reaction by some on Facebook and social media has been a very negative thing. And in the age of social media, that's one of the very first things that a new young family is going to come take a look at as they're looking at a prospective community. So building up our overall community image, taking a look at that would be that third thing I think we can do to attract young families.
All right, very good. Did that answer your question for you well enough? All righty. Anybody else? Hands in the air, please. No one? All right. Well, I'm going to pick on the mayor because, quite frankly, he's there.
It's what you do.
It is. So, sorry. But sorry, not sorry. And anyway, so you've been a part of city government for 20 years, a little more maybe. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, 12 as mayor and 14 as a city councilman before that.
Okay. So you've helped steer Oskaloosa through some times where, let's just say, the sewer projects, all of those weren't getting the attention maybe that they deserved. And maybe today we're paying a price for that a little bit. Can you walk us through historically how we've gotten to where we're at today, where I know infrastructure is such a big deal?
Yeah, back when I first came on city council, there was a culture of the council that was one of what can we do to control taxes? And to control taxes, what are we going to do to control expenses? And so we looked for any way we could to just keep things done cheap. And so instead of tearing out a sewer line, we might see if we could patch it. Or if it was leaking, we would decide, well, that stormwater, yeah, there's a leak there, but it's not bad enough that we need to fix it. And so we would go ahead and leave some of that maintenance off. Or we would delay it for another year or 2 years, let it get bad enough, and then we would fix it. When we were doing streets, it was very similar to that, where we were doing some seal coating, but not a lot of it. And so everywhere you turned, it was all about the emphasis on let's keep our taxes low. That's what's going to bring people to town. And then it started to change. We started to realize that after you seal coat streets for about so long, you really have to tear them out and fix them, actually replace them. With our stormwater systems and with our drinking water systems, there was a lot of leakage in there. And in the last 10 years, we started realizing that this is real money, that if we invest a little bit more into making our systems better, we don't have to spend as much on the maintenance. And so that change in attitude took place roughly the tail end of Don Sandor's term as city manager, and then it flipped when Mike Schrock became the city manager. And about the time that I became mayor, he and I were within about 4 months of each other. And then with that, he brought with him a number of ideas on the way they were doing things in Arizona, where he came from. And he started talking about how are we investing into making things better. And as the council, what is your real vision of what do you want the city of Oskaloosa to be? Is it going to be the low-cost environment, or is it going to actually be something different? And what we shook out over time was just a very simple mission statement that said we want to be a safe community with small town feel and charm. That was it. Everything else we worked on had to fit within that vision. And so we started looking at streets. We hired Iowa State to come down. They did an inventory of the streets to find out which ones were the worst, which ones were the best. And then we also did traffic studies to see which ones were the highest priorities, and then made a point of putting $1 million a year into our streets. Then we started looking at stormwater. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources helped us to look at stormwater and said, okay, we've looked at what's coming out of your city. You need to put in a new wastewater treatment plant. Good news for you, we're going to give you until 2027 to get it built. In the meantime, you've got some work to do. You need to be looking at what your infrastructure is like. And it works to our benefit. So what we've been doing is very aggressively replacing both sanitary and storm sewer, with the idea being that, especially in the case of sanitary, that is the more we can control that flow so we don't have inflow coming through leaks getting into the system, we don't have to build quite so much of a wastewater treatment plant. These things are very expensive, and it is something that we need to keep an eye out for. And along with that then came the attention to, well, what about the living experience? So if we go into the downtown, what plagues so many cities of our size is a downtown that's full of old buildings. Old buildings that our realtors will tell you can't support themselves with the business that's in there. And so they have to be renovated, but how? And so that's where a community needs to put its own resources in as well. So we were able to use federal funding, state funding, and then also roll some local funding in with a match by the owners in order to do the facade projects that you find around the city square. Very helpful for enhancing the attitude that people have about the city of Oskaloosa as they walk down. They talk about what a charming community it is. Then we also worked on, well, let's make the bandstand good, that's fine. But when we started to do some recruiting, that was when things really started to pay off. When we were interviewing for our police chief, he came in and said, do you guys realize what you have here? This is like something out of a storybook. It's beautiful. Do you understand what you have? And we just had taken it in stride. We've got some of our council members here tonight where we just said, well, yeah, that's what we were working on, all right. But we didn't take time to really celebrate it as much as people coming into the community do. And so that's been the progression of thought and deed over the last probably 10 or so years, where you're seeing a lot of work being done on the infrastructure, but also trying to enhance the attitudes of the population here in Oskaloosa.
So you guys have been building a good foundation for the community. So long story short, so why would people believe that, we'll just look at a couple of neighboring communities that they're developing, springing up every time you come into town, there's something new, there's something different. Why does those communities seem to have traction while Oskaloosa slips?
Part of it, I believe, has to do with the attitude of the population. That Pella gets used as an example over and over and over again about, look what they're doing. There's per capita, there's a lot of money running around in Pella, and therefore the belief that there's a good place for development to take place. And so what Oskaloosa doesn't have as much of would be the per capita income that Pella does, in my opinion. And so with that culture then comes, well, this can do from larger companies being there like Vermeer, Pellacorp, et cetera.
I use Grinnell often because we're very similar towns in size and both have 4-lane access. I usually, typically, whenever I'm making comparisons, I try to leave Pella out because they have large corporations there that have their headquarters, which for most people, corporate headquarters are the main source of revenue for many towns. Mm-hmm. So yeah, comparing even smaller towns, Ottumwa has been revitalizing, seems to have good traction, and this is for everybody. When you're looking at developing Oskaloosa, what kinds of real positives are you seeing, and what kinds of things do you think have been boat anchors?
I'll defer to the rest.
I'll take it. I talk to business owners and I've talked to builders, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. And I had the same thing occur again. You heard the same sentiments from people. Rhonda, we make it so extremely tough for people to come here. We make it so extremely tough to put a business in here. We make it so extremely tough to build here. There's so many restrictions. There's so many guidelines. I'm new to this. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what the guidelines are, and I don't know what the restrictions are. I know Pella does have restrictions also. They have, but they seem to be able to work through them because, like you said, every time you go there, they're building something new. But I did hear from a builder, and he's doing most of his work in Pella now. And he said, I loved building. He lives here. He said, I loved it, but he said, I just got tired of fighting the fight. I'm building, and he says, I got more work than I can handle now. So I'd like to, that is actually very kind of a passion of mine in this. So I would like to find out why are we making it? So, I mean, we've got the capita, we've got the people. I agree, we have a mentality in this town. I agree, and I'm not from here originally, but there is a mentality in this town that, we're just not going to do it, right? It's just, we're not, but I would like to figure out, or to get into that and to find out why are we making it difficult for these people to come here? And I mean, I haven't canvassed everybody, obviously, but I've been around this week, the last couple of weeks, and everywhere I go, I've tried to stop and say, hey, I'm Rhonda, I'm running for council. Can I pick your brain? And they love to give you lots of stuff. So, but that was a sentiment that I heard over and over from people, that it's just so dang hard to come here.
I would probably spin it on a little bit of a positive note. We've had a global brand hotel come in the recent years. We have a new YMCA with early childhood development. We've had market rate apartment buildings. We've had residential development. Scooters has come. Pizza Hut is on the way again. We've had Wendy's, Taco Bell, all of them redo their buildings. There's a lot of good stuff. We have a lot of manufacturing that is already, expanding here. And we just have to be willing to work and willing to bring people in. And I think that it's just a mindset we all need to get around. There is development happening. It might not be told, the greatest way, but if we can learn to market ourselves and tell our story and just get it out to the public, what's really happening, I think you'll see a change in people's aspect and take on that. And it won't be so much like we're the halt. There's a lot of growth in this community that people really don't realize that's happening.
Yeah, I would echo what Jana said there as well, that there are good things going on. I mean, just look at the A Avenue corridor. Within the past couple of years, there has been some significant improvement there, and maybe our story perhaps is not being sold. Rhonda did touch on an issue there as well. Perceptions are as dangerous as reality, okay? There perhaps is a perception that we as a community have made it difficult for developers to come in. I'm not a developer, not a builder. I work at a hospital and managing a call center and centralized scheduling, okay? So I'm not, quite honestly, credentialed to sit here and say, yes, we are making it harder, or no, we're not making it harder. I can say that we have the same building codes as the city of Pella, and they are obviously making different strides. The mayor rightfully so noted that there is a different comparison between Pella and Oskaloosa. Quite honestly, I think it's worth somewhat of a discussion, though, because that perception can be just as dangerous as the reality. And if we're not addressing that, talking with developers and just truly finding out what their general experience was. We don't have to sit there and grill them and say, do you think it's hard to come to Oskaloosa? Have an open forum with them. Just find out what their overall experience is, and we can maybe cinch up some loopholes there. But also on the same token, I think it's important to promote the positive side of Oskaloosa rather than bring up the negative a lot.
Very good. Lisa?
Okay. My 21-year-old daughter lived with me this summer, and she was up at the square, and she was looking around, and she's like, Oskaloosa, just take a chance, She's like, there's so many, positive things that are just like right, on the verge. Scooters has been brought up. I heard Scooters had the biggest business on an opening day ever, and that business has been around since 1998, Just take a chance in that. I think it's very important on the maintenance and that of a community, but like a family, you have to be careful that not all the budget is going to the maintenance, and maybe take a vacation, maybe do something a little fun, and it doesn't have to be that extravagant. But again, it's the attitude. The lighted Christmas parade is like, wow. Another thing I noticed when I was campaigning last year for county supervisor is we could do a lot more coordination. There's 9 other communities in this county. And sometimes it's as simple as looking at a calendar. Like, we've had some competing social events, and maybe coordinate those. And so I think it'd be kind of nice to have a liaison on the council, cleanup day and working with the landfill and doing those kind of things. It doesn't have to be hard, but there's proven studies that the prettier your community is, whether it's with green space, gardens, repairs, the less crime you're going to have. People just take a pride. Sometimes they don't even know it consciously, but there is that as well. So I think we have a lot to offer. We just need to sometimes maybe have a little bit of an attitude. I know when I taught at Southwestern in Creston, they had such a, shucks, we're just, and they would put their head down. It's like, no, lift it up and be proud of what you have and go from there, because that is contagious.
All right. Well, we heard from Matt Thompson from Indian Hills a little bit ago, and I kind of want to circle back to this, but I also have John Otteson from William Penn, and I think the education factor that's available for folks here is amazing. So how would you guys, as city council members, and we can dig into this because Diane's going off the council now, so we can start to talk about this again. So how would you as a council and mayor help build that connection between not only Indian Hills, but really with the 4-year university that is in Oskaloosa here, and make the most of that?
I'll take that. My daughter could have went anywhere. She was going to go to Iowa, then she was going to go to Iowa State, then she was going to go to Texas. You know, she was 18, so she was going to go anywhere. And she chose to stay home and go to William Penn. I've been a booster member there for 8, 9, 10 years. Even before I had kids going there, it was reasonable. It was keeping her close to home. I'll be honest; she's our oldest, and it had a lot of friends that had their kids go through there that had really good positive things to say about it. She's glad she stayed. She is transferring to Iowa State. She's going to be a civil engineer, but she has really enjoyed, and they have really done a good job with her. She had an issue the first year, and she went straight to the dean, and I mean, it was just a simple thing, and we didn't even have to get involved. I mean, they took care of it. She's made some really good friends. I say this, and I love basketball. Everybody knows me. I never hardly miss a game there, but it's like family there. They really treat them like family, and I think that's important. I almost wish we had as much camaraderie at Penn, or for the city, as we do at Penn, because it is. It's a very good family tradition there. You've done a great job, and I'm not saying that, but it is. It's a great community, and it's a great school for kids.
So how do we use that for the betterment of Oskaloosa?
Well, and saying that, so I asked my daughter tonight when they were leaving to go to Wells Fargo, I said, what would keep you here? And so that was texting when I was, what is it? Because, right, because they go to school and then they leave. And she said, Mom, gyms and shops and restaurants. And I think that it's not the school. I don't think the school gets wonderful kids. And we get a few of them that stay. There's some kids that stay. We've got a few that stay. But I think for the most part, that draw, like I was saying, that draw about having something for 20, 30, 40-year-olds, kids are different nowadays, you guys. I mean, I have a 17 and a 20-year-old. Kids' mentality is totally different. They'll go to where there's things to do. They'll go to where there's places to eat. They'll go to where there's places to live. If it costs them more, they don't care. They'll do that. And so I think, we have a great school. It's, like I said, I'm not trying to be negative. I don't know if that's that what you're feeling, that I'm being negative about the town. It's not that. I think there's some good things here. I just think there's a lot of things that we could do, and I think there's a lot more things we could do. Obviously, budget and things like that, but and the attitude in this town is, you're right. I mean, I hear it, right? I'm out in the community. I hear it all the time. It starts when they're young, and if you bring things, if you build it, they'll come. If you bring things here, they'll stay. You're going to keep everybody? No. But you got a better chance of keeping more people if you have more things here.
All right. Anybody else want to tackle it? So we're looking for how to use that positive as William Penn to help make Oskaloosa a much better place.
Yeah, and I think we need a little bit more visibility. I'm sorry, but Indian Hills, it took me quite a while to find out where you were, in town, and that. I think we could do at William Penn. I had 3 students board with me during COVID, and they were looking for a place, and so learning about Iowa and what was available. They didn't even know Red Rock. The lake was just a little ways away, or some of the other things, too. So I think doing more, outreach to the college and having students feel safe as they walk around town. I know one of my students, is African descent, and it was the first time he'd ever been yelled at, in here, and, the Confederate flags at some places. And so, learning about that. I think, too, we need to think about the change. I think Oskaloosa is right on the verge of a renaissance. With COVID, we've learned a lot about communities and how we can work. We're right in the middle between Iowa City and Des Moines. People are commuting, working from home more. We've got a fantastic Wi-Fi system that most small communities don't have. So talking about infrastructure, that's something that we've built that people really value now. So I think we could really be on this renaissance, and incorporating the colleges into that, because being a college town is very important.
I'm looking forward to what the 2 William Penn alum are going to throw into this here.
Yeah, so I think that, Charlie and I are kind of prime examples. I did not grow up here, but I went to Penn and I stayed here because of the connections I made with Penn. And I had to go a little bit out of my way to make those happen. And I think that if we can get the visibility from the companies, to showcase what they have to offer, and what type of jobs are here, and good paying jobs are here. That's really what we need, is to be able to just bridge that gap, get kids in those manufacturing locations, different positions, see what's here. That can really help bring a positive impact, and maybe we'll start seeing more people call Oskaloosa their home and want to be engaged in the community. But it's not just the students that are going to have to do it, it's the community that's going to have to get together and bring them together, because a lot of kids don't have vehicles. So it's how can, different corporations arrange ways, to get students there, to show them what opportunities are here. And I think that if we can focus on that and make that happen, it will be a game changer.
My answer is relatively short. We have to be more welcoming of the students into this community. William Penn University is not its own world. William Penn University is a part of the city of Oskaloosa, and if we are not welcoming of the students who are coming to live in Oskaloosa and potentially stay in Oskaloosa, we will not retain them.
All right, so hopefully we'll have a question or two from the audience here, but until then I'll throw another one out there. So public safety is one of the most basic needs that a city provides to its citizens, fire, police, those kinds of things. So going forward, what would be your vision for providing those services to the residents of Oskaloosa? And we'll start with the mayor and we'll just work down the panel.
Law enforcement is, of course, part of being safe. And so it is one of those fundamentals. Oskaloosa has had a change with the police chief, a change in attitude in the way that we were doing policing. I think what I hear more often than not is the chief is friendlier. He takes more of a soft hand approach to the way that laws are enforced in Oskaloosa. It's not just a regulation thing, it's let's understand the situation we're dealing with first. And then working with relationships, try to prevent crime from happening. The vision that I have and what I try to do, and we're blessed with the chamber does a great job of this, is that the more you can get a community to interact with itself, have the sort of things like the bandstand being used for concerts on Thursday night, the downtown parades, the sweet corn serenades, all of those types of events all help people to get together and know one another, be friendly to one another. And so, a little side note, when you're the mayor of a town, you get asked for interviews a lot from folks who are in academia. So I was talking to a gentleman from Princeton, and when I was talking to him about the community, I told him that from my perspective, that was one of the things that Oskaloosa does really right, was the more you mix people together, the less likely you are to burglarize their home or break into their car or do any of those other things. And so the unique culture of Oskaloosa is what I try to do in crime prevention, but also just helping people feel safe enough that they can leave their bicycle parked on the side of a building, or they can walk along the street without really a care.
Well, I grew up in a state park here, and so my dad had to go into law enforcement in Des Moines. Those were a couple of lonely weeks in February, and that when he was gone for that training. But it gave us a real respect for the law and what he did. He had a jurisdiction of his park and the other areas, and he was by himself. He did not have a partner. And you'd have some stories. Dad really learned how to talk to somebody. He could get a keg party out of there, just by telling them to be careful, watch out for the bats, the snakes and that. And suddenly, boy, they were packed up and gone. And they had a perception of this friendly ranger versus somebody who was out, destroying their fun, and so you keep the vandalism down and all of that. When I was campaigning for county supervisor, I got to know the sheriff quite well, and knowing the value of the budget, going to all the other different cities too. The a collaboration we could do with the fire departments. New Sharon has a fantastic fire department, and when we need them, if there is a really big fire, as there was in the square, years ago, we need that kind of cooperation. But we need that idea. It's an old idea. I'm a historian, so it's the old idea of the beat, and where people are, as law enforcement, you know them and you feel comfortable talking to them. And we live near the cemetery, and so it's nice, in a bizarre way, to watch the funeral processions go by. And the other day I saw 2 police officers out there, and the woman stood the entire procession with her hand, like that. And then a couple kids pulled up with their rap music going really loud, and I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And all of a sudden they saw her standing there, and they turned down the radio. They turned down the stereo, and it was just that kind of rapport that you need. So anyway, so I think we need to be very resourceful and respectful of our law enforcement and our fire departments.
Well, I love our fire department. Obviously, I work for Mid-American. They are our backbone. A lot of times, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, we spend a lot of time together. We get to know each other real well. The police department is great too, and the sheriffs. My boss was on the posse there for a while. They block our roads until we get enough people there. Unfortunately, most of our guys now live out of Oskaloosa, so some of them have to drive to get in. So for a hit line or a fire or down poles, we rely on them. They're wonderful. The city also, I will say the city is phenomenal. They'll get the signs out so that we can release the cops. We try to release them as quickly as we can, obviously, to get the barricades out. We got to keep the people out of the traffic. People love, when you have something like that, they love to drive in there. They like to get in there. They like to gawk. The fire department, they'll help me clear out a house. They'll help me air it out. They'll get their fan. We'll get it cleared out. Call the ambulance. We rely on them. I spend as much time with them as I probably do my coworkers. So I think it's very important. I actually talked to them the other day. There were a couple guys short, so they've been pulling some shifts and doing some things. And we were talking about personnel. And like I said, those guys they just lost the fire chief. I also come from, I've had several family members that were cops, so it's a very vital thing. I think seeing them in the community the other day, they had open house, and I think Hoist said they had 250 hot dogs in an hour. I mean, there was a lot of people that came through there. They welcomed the community to come in there and check out. They have a really nice new facility if you haven't been in there. But yeah, our sheriffs and our fire and our cops, 22 years, I can't say enough about them.
Public safety is very important, and we all want to live in a safe community, and just to remember that these people are human is important. And I think that we need to do a good job of saying, hey, we all make mistakes, but they're here to help us, and they're not here to get you. They're not out for you. And I think that's important, and it's just a mindset that everybody needs to have. And when you need them, they're going to be there, and you respect them, we respect you. So.
And I would just say that I think a lot of it is the culture of the departments, culture of the community. I think as the mayor pointed out, we've seen some changes in the police department, culture change. That's been an improvement. We have an opportunity with our fire department to continue to work on culture. Most importantly, in the community, we want to build a family-friendly culture. If we have a family-friendly culture, people get along. Studies show that crime goes down. So it really just comes back to the culture of all 3 entities.
Well, I'd just like to add to that, we just had the fire department and the emergency response and all of them out at our work. And we try to do that every couple of years just to kind of catch up on things. And I have a lot of the outer towns, and so even my volunteer firefighter departments, some of those guys are even phenomenal too. Like you're saying, New Sharon. I work west mostly, but they were very responsive. They were there. We fed them lunch. They were there about 4 hours. Asked some great questions. Like I said, I think the police department's misunderstood a lot of times, but they are very welcoming. I mean, if you invite them, they'll come. They're great to sit around and visit with. So.
All right. So, do we have any hands in the audience? Questions? I really hope so. Not yet. All right, Mr. Comfort. So one of those questions is how will you be able to balance both your school board and your city council duties, and how can the residents of Oskaloosa and those folks from the school district can be made aware that there's no conflicts of interest and that you'll have each and separate entity at the best that you can do?
I think that's a very fair question. Number one, I guess I'll go back to my employment experience. So in my current job, I manage approximately 23 employees over 3 different departments. 3 different departments with 3 different visions, 3 different productivity goals, all working together though under one mission. And to be successful in doing that, you have to be able to manage your time well, be organized, and be able to set goals and priorities to work with everybody individually. And I think I've done that well in my job. Obviously, they ask me to return each day. So when it comes to managing conflicts of interest between school board and city council and just time management, it's important to note that the Oski School Board meets once a month, second Tuesday of the month. Occasionally, we keep the 4th Tuesday open for a work session. City council meets on the 1st and 3rd Monday of the month. So time management-wise, I think we're covered there. When it comes to conflicts of interest, that is something that I definitely have taken a look at. Definitely, even in my service on the school board, I have been very, very careful about any potential conflicts of interest. Namely, my brother is an employee of the school district. I've abstained from any vote involving him. When I served on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I abstained from any vote with the school district and the construction trades home. And when it comes to city council business, I did access the city council code of ethics. If there is ever something that I am in question of, I will contact the city attorney and get his opinion. Likewise, when it comes to school district matters, if there's ever something I am in question of, I will contact our local school district attorney and get their opinion. I will not put myself, the city, or the school in a position where there's ever going to be a perceived conflict of interest, and will abstain from discussion, votes, anything involving joint business.
All right. And Lisa, I'm going to pick on you next. So you've only been in Oskaloosa, what, 3 years now?
A little over.
Okay. So when you're decided to run, I mean, a year or so ago, you looked to be a county supervisor. Now you're looking to be the city council member. Do you feel as though you have enough experience in Oskaloosa to understand its people and its mission to be able to be an effective leader for our community going forward?
Well, I've lived in Iowa most of my life, and I've spent a lot of my graduate career studying, Midwestern social history and that. So I certainly have the personal, experience as well as the academic experience with small towns. And so I think I have a lot to offer. I think there's you want a really good balance of inside, outside in that. And so you don't want a council that's all outsiders, and you don't want a council that's all insiders. You don't want to be saying, oh, that's the way we've always done it, we're always going to do it that way. Well, what are some new ideas, and what are some things that we've done? I'm also, a historian, so looking at, this town was almost double the size 100 years ago. Why? Because of the coal mining. Now, coal mining has gone, but we're left with a really good infrastructure of the houses and that. And so that's something that could really draw people here as well. So I think it's always good to have, some new ideas and some new vantage points in that. And I think sometimes outsiders are the ones who can do the best promoting. They're like, look at this place. When I stepped out of the car the first day we were here, there's the coffee shop and the square, and the church bells were ringing. It was like something out of a Hallmark card, and it took new eyes to see that. I know my neighbors down the street. He came back to get his birth certificate. He said he stepped out of the car and he's like, I want to come back. And so I think we need that, as Charlie said, we need that welcoming. And I know from some places I felt extremely welcome. And that when you go to the Y, Rhonda knows your name after the second time she's met you. She really creates that community. When we met for Chamber and doing the Main Street Committee, and that knowing what grants are available and bringing that kind of expertise, that way you can say, you know what, there's a lot of things we can do versus, I don't know. So I think I have that to offer.
So we kind of like the Oski Pride thing. We'll hear it at the elementary school, Oski Pride. We'll hear it through this. But I think the mayor can maybe tell us a story about maybe one of his predecessors. There's not a whole lot known, but it was the first female mayor. Can you help me fill in the gaps on that? Because I think it's pretty remarkable, actually, for Oskaloosa.
You know more about it than I do. I know it in just fundamentally speaking that Oskaloosa has the distinction of having elected the first female mayor. However, as it turned out, she did not take office after she was voted in. And so officially, the rolls don't show that she was the mayor, but the records and the newspapers of the day would show that she was in fact elected.
So I bring that up as a point of conversation that we can all maybe self-reflect and say, hey, we're a progressive community. We respect people. Maybe we grow. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's good. But when you're looking at your time that you've been in Oskaloosa, what part, one individual thing that you've looked at historically, and you go, I'm really proud of my town for that. So I'll start with Charlie, because I know you've kind of liked a little bit of history too. So
I would say the one project that I'm most proud of would be the city's collaboration with the Early Childhood and Recreation Center. There's a lot.
But that's not history, Charlie. I want to know historically.
You want to know history?
I want to know.
I'm talking about my life. I've lived a young life, Ken.
I know, but you and Mr. Chuck Russell spent some time together. So, I mean, you're older than you think you are.
As I think back over the history of Oskaloosa, one of the projects that I am most proud of would be our downtown bandstand. I think that if you look at the history of the bandstand, that has been basically our meeting point for everything. President Roosevelt was there, President Trump, President Obama. I mean, every single presidential candidate, I think, for the past 12 years have been there. We've had so many different events up there, and it's just a beautiful square and beautiful downtown. So I would say our downtown bandstand, and look at the summertime when you have our historical band and you have it just filled with people, children running around, older citizens sitting in their cars observing. Definitely our bandstand, I would say, would be the project that I am most proud of and thankful for as I look back over the history.
Anybody else have some reference that,
I agree with Charlie. I'm not a lifelong resident here either, but the square is beautiful. I think my father's passed away, but I remember when he first came here, when I first moved here, and this is even before the remodeling and the refacing. He said, it was just a very nice hometown feel. That square was just made you feel welcome to come into the community.
I would add the hospital. Every night I walk the dogs past the hospital, and it is such a great blend of then and now. You see the original building in the front. You see the 2 COVID sheds in front of it. And then you see the other 4 plus the hospice and that. And it is just such an important resource that you don't know it's there until you need it, And I know when my mom was life flighted a couple years ago, still in the middle of the night, I'll hear that helicopter come in and leave it, And it's like, I just worry about who has to be on that, but thank God it's there. And so that we've kept that hospital. And it's the second largest employer in this community. And so I think we should be really, really proud of that. And that too is why older people move to a community. That's why Grinnell has attracted so many, because it has a very good regional hospital. And so do we. I've heard that comment made by a number of young and old, So I like that blend of the hospital.
I would probably touch on the industry and manufacturing. If we didn't have those businesses, we wouldn't be here. You can go anywhere in the U.S. and see a fire hydrant was made in Oskaloosa, Iowa. How cool is that? You don't get that every day. And the bricks even in here, they say Oskaloosa. That's history, That puts us on the map in a different way than we could ever imagine.
Well, I thank you all for your input. I love history. I'm a history nut, so thinking of Lisa's comment. So on top of the old part of Mahaska Hospital was nurses' quarters, and those were fairly recently taken down, and I think one's now a backyard shed. So, little history. But I know, little pitch you pick up along the way. But so I'm getting close to the end of my rants, so hopefully there's somebody out here that I think I see a taker here. Okay. So I don't trust you with the mic. You're city council member, so I'll hold on to the mic.
Hi, I'm Steve Burnett. I am currently on city council. Let me read you an email I received last week, and let's see how you'd handle it, okay? So it says, I moved here 3 years ago. I've noticed that the roads, South 3rd, High Avenue East, K Avenue, South 7th need work. They get a lot of traffic, and it looks like they've not had any attention, especially the roads around and close to the square. I feel I pay a high amount for property tax, but don't see my money at work. I also would like to know why not many businesses are coming to town besides pizza places. This town does not offer much for shopping. No wonder people drive to Des Moines. I try real hard to support businesses in town, but cannot always do so. I sometimes feel I made a mistake moving here because I do not think the town is trying too hard to make the town better. How would you answer that? How would you answer that question?
That I heard that all week long when I canvassed my neighborhood and talked to businesses and talked to people, and same exact thing that you just read. And I said, okay, but I said there's two types of people that live in this town, and I'm not trying. There's people that complain about it, and there's people that do something about it. I used to complain. You can ask my husband. I used to complain about it. I used to complain about things. I think, why in the world do they do this? Why? And so I guess for me, that's part of the reason that I got on here, because I think there is a need. I think there is I hope people don't think I'm negative. I think there is a lot of good things there. There is a lot of good things there, but I think that we could be better than we are. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we need a ton of things to come in here. We just need something to start drawing, because it's like an addiction that once it comes, then people say, oh, I'm going to come to Oskaloosa. It's just no different than Pella. They're getting things, and right, everybody hears about it. We're going to go because they have something new. We're going to try it, and if they like it, they'll stay. They'll come. They'll come here and they'll think, oh, that's the best cup of coffee I have. I'll drive back over to have another cup of coffee. I think that we as a city need to focus and promote this town. I think we need to reach out. I think we need, like I said, I just listened to what people told me. I think we need to bend a little bit. If it means bending a little bit to get something to come here. My husband worked in wastewater for 27 years. They didn't change anything. They didn't maintain anything. I mean, he can tell you stories. I listened to it when he'd come home at 3 o'clock in the morning with people who have sewage in their basement. I think we need a good game plan to say, okay, for the next 20 years, we're going to do this and this. New Sharon used to be one of my towns. I switched routes. But every year they do a little section here. They don't do a whole lot, right? They do maybe a couple blocks of water and sewer and road. Water and they keep doing it, and they keep moving. They keep moving around. And you go through that town, you can tell, and I think we got to start with we got to have a 20-year plan, Steve. We got to have a plan so that we're not in this position where we're going, okay, now we're spending millions of dollars, right? We're mandated, we're made to do some of it, right? But we need to have a plan so that we can say, okay, things don't last forever. Your car doesn't last forever. Your house doesn't last forever. These things weren't meant to last forever. I drive down South 7th to go to the Y. I agree. I drive down K Avenue East. I drove down the mayor's subdivision for years and thinking, why would you buy a house there with that road being like that? I'm being honest with you. I was so proud when you guys got those. It was terrible. So I think we need to listen to the people too, because just in the few people that I've listened, I've only talked to 100 people in the last 2 weeks since I've been running. You hear the same thing. They want change. Do they want higher taxes? No. But they don't want the high water bill. I mean, there's going to have to be some give and take. But I think there's some things that we can do, and we can say, and we need to communicate with that was another thing I meant to bring up, that people tell me all the time, Rhonda, the city doesn't communicate with us. We don't know what's going on. I think we need to do a better job of saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is our 20-year plan. We're going to start this quadrant and this quadrant. We're going to do our best to try to get around to do these things.
So if I understood you correctly, Steve, your question was how we would respond to an email like that. Well,
And quite frankly, not near as many as you may think you'll see either. They just don't come very often, right?
Right.
But that is one I actually got last week, so I'm curious how you would respond to it.
So having served on the school board, get emails like that, not quite about the same issues, but similar emails. And I guess my big thing has always been, I never promise anything to anybody. I want to hear what their core issue is. If they raise up the road issue, so of course my reaction is going to be to check with city staff, check out the issue itself, drive down those roads and see, okay, is there an issue here that maybe city staff isn't aware of? Number two, speaking of city staff, not micromanage the staff, let them do their job. But as the constituent also points out their concerns regarding development, I think you spin it back as well and point out the positive things that have happened. Look at the A Avenue corridor, T-Mobile, scooters, McDonald's. I mean, just the new Italian restaurant coming into town, the downtown facade improvements. You just have to also focus on the positives, in my view.
I think I would handle the question with willing to sit down with that constituent and see, what is the root of the problem. We only have so much money in the budget for roads and everything. So can we change? Is there a road that needs more, done quicker than a different one? For shopping, I would ask, what are your shopping needs? What are you looking for? We have actually brought in, like Betsy's Boutique, it came in a pandemic. Not many communities can say that they had successful new businesses during a pandemic. So I'd want to know what type of business they're looking for and what's drawing them to a different community to go shop. And I think it's just, we got to listen, but we can't do everything, and I think people need to understand that, but we also need to be willing to try, to help make things better, but also, inform them that it's going to take time and it's not the snap of your fingers and something gets done.
Well, first of all, I would say if I receive that kind of email, I would try to call and talk to the person. I get really tired of emails going back and forth and it doesn't seem to solve anything. I think we need to do a lot more collaboration. The roads are not just the city's responsibility, but the county as well. I've been very scared at times with how many semis come through the city, and I don't think it's just the city's problem. I think we need to do more collaboration on who can do what for that kind of problem. With economies, we've got new economies. People don't do as much clothing shopping or shoe shopping. I've been impressed at the shopping that we do have, here, but we don't use malls like we used to. And so maybe looking at some new ideas there. They always say, too, if you can get involved, if you can just be part of some smaller project working on something like you said, New Sharon, and that, it's easy to naysay and it's easy to write a bad review. And we've all felt that before. But then we need to take a breath, take a step back and okay, how in my own way could I make something? What group could I join to make things a little bit better? And there's some really great groups here that we could be collaborating with. So I think we need to do some more of that,
I'm going to pick on one of the police officers back there. How many miles of roads are in Oskaloosa? And you're not setting yourself up for anything. I just want to know how many miles. Too many. Okay. So where I'm going with this is it's a little over $1 million a mile normally to rebuild roads. And I think the mayor expressed there's $1 million a year that's going into roads.
Was back in the day, yeah. We had to pull away from that when some of the local option sales tax money was discontinued.
Okay. So, and I'm not picking on anybody with this, so I'm just looking at the plain economics of it. We all complain of roads here in Oskaloosa. How do we bridge that gap then? Because $1 million is not going to get a lot of roads in Oskaloosa per year.
Well, I can tell you what we're doing. The approach that we've taken is that all roads age every day. And so your goal is to really get as much time as you can out of a road. So the techniques that are coming around, we're trying a new one this year having to do with, take a step back. When a road deteriorates, it's typically because there have been some cracks that developed. Water, ice gets in there, it expands, contracts, and then it causes the road to break up. And so the idea is that what can we do to prevent that moisture from getting down into the cracks? And so we've done, you've seen seal coating done before where we lay down a layer of some sort of a sticky, oily material and then throw some gravel on top of that, and then it receives a few more treatments, and that'll get you a few more years out of that particular road. This year we're trying one where it's a different type of substance that goes in and will actually seal all the cracks that it finds. We think that's going to do a better job of giving us a little bit longer length out of our streets. The next thing is, and it's been touched on, is that we also only have a limited amount. And so trying to find the priorities. South 7th is one that, oh my gosh, I think we've been talking about that for 5 years now. And what we've done is bits and pieces at a time. What can we afford this year? Well, how about $300,000 this year? We'll throw another $300,000 next year. Every time we go through the budgeting process, we do that. And then if we get surprised on a road project, it comes in dramatically under budget, okay, let's put that into South 7th, or let's figure out what some other priority is that we can work on. But I can tell you that's the way we're doing it now.
So would the city council candidates have any thoughts that they would maybe do things differently? They like the way that it's currently being done? Any thoughts? I mean, $1 million a year, roads.
And I understand, and it doesn't go that far. I live on one of those chipped roads. And I understand budget. I get that, but I just still think we need to have a plan to where eventually, I mean, even if we're only doing 2 blocks or 3 blocks or what, I think we need to have somewhere that when you get emails and people say we're not doing anything, and you have a plan, you can say, okay, well, we are. This is where we are. Might be small, might be little, but we're getting somewhere. Because and like I said, the naysayers, people don't see it. Right, it's been that way for forever. Needs just to got to have a game plan. Got to have a plan to say, okay, this is where we are and this is where we're going to be. Might be small, but we're getting somewhere.
All right. Any last thoughts from any of the other candidates? All right. Well, I'm going to ask Matt to come up and maybe answer any questions that other folks might have. And if not, then we get to go home.
Well, it's been a lot of fun to listen tonight to the council, and I know it takes a special person to want to be in the public eye and to make decisions for a community, and so I appreciate your willingness to do that here in Oskaloosa. And I was just jotting down a few notes, thinking a little bit about quality communities that we have across our region. And Dr. Jim Lindenmeyer is with me tonight. Jim was the longtime president at Indian Hills Community College and a good friend of mine. And as we drove into the community, and every time I come to Oskaloosa, I think, what a great community that you have. The square is beautiful. You've got a lot of great industry. And so I was just thinking about quality communities have great education. You have William Penn University. You have the Mahaska County Service Center run by Indian Hills Community College right across the road. You've got a quality healthcare facility. We're proud to put a lot of nurses and radiologic technicians into that facility and many other professions. Public safety. Have a great public safety system here as well. Great infrastructure or great industry and infrastructure. You guys get to work all that out. but you know, you have a great industry base here as well. And so as a college that helps prepare individuals, it takes people to stay in communities. 86% of our graduates remain in our region, and that's really important. And so as we move into the November 2nd election, you know, we're asking the public for continued investment in the community college to help prepare people for many great professions here, to keep people here in this region, to keep a very viable industry, and to have a really quality community that you have, and to be able to help continue to progress. So I would take any questions about the bond that you may have, and certainly, again, want to say thank you for letting me come in today and be a part of this session here with you all. I don't know about that. I might have put him to sleep.
That works too.
Here you go.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and let us all go home, but not before I don't, give a few thanks to folks. So first of all, Penn Central Mall, Mike Gipple, they've worked really hard to help set all this up. It takes a lot of time, a lot of manpower to do that. Aaron Riggs, who's been running our live stream for us tonight, without the tech wizard himself, this wouldn't be so pretty. And of course, to the candidates, Mr. Mayor, I know you've been at it for a while, so I kind of pick on you some. So, but really, we have to thank you guys. When you put yourselves out there like you are right now, it's difficult. And so thank you for putting yourselves out there. Thank you for wanting to make a difference. So for everybody here, everybody that's been a part of this, thank you. I'm ready for next year. I'm done with this year. So on to November 2nd in the election, and everybody have a good night.